Number 10. The Ford Edsel, 1957 to 1960. Ford spent years building a car they were convinced would change everything. They named it after Henry Ford's own son. When it launched, dealers were packed. Crowds showed up just to see it, then people drove it. The front grille looked like a toilet seat. That is not a joke. People actually called it that to Ford's face. The push-button gear selector was built directly into the steering wheel, right where drivers expected the horn. Drivers accidentally changed gears in traffic. The quality was just as bad. Hoods would not close. Paint peeled before the car left the lot. Ford had rushed production, and it showed in every single panel. They cut the price. They redesigned the badge. Nothing worked. By 1960, Ford killed the Edsel after just 3 model years. The total loss was over $350 million, nearly $4 billion in today's money. The name Edsel became a permanent word in the English language for corporate failure. Number 9. Smell-O-Vision, 1960. What if you could smell a movie? In 1960, a Swiss inventor named Hans Laube ran tubes under every seat in the cinema. When a scene appeared on screen, a matching scent pumped out. Roses, pipe smoke, wine. The premiere in New York was a sensation. Then the second screening happened. The smells arrived too late. Some seats were flooded with scent. Others got nothing. The pumping mechanism hissed loudly throughout the film. Critics tore it apart. Audiences laughed. Smell-O-Vision never recovered. One film, one chance, one disaster. The idea that cinema could be experienced through your nose died in a single week. Number 8. The Amphicar Model 770, 1961. A car that drives on land. A boat that floats on water. One vehicle. President Lyndon Johnson famously drove guests toward his Texas lake, screaming that the brakes had failed. As the car hit the water and floated, the passengers realized it was a prank. That prank is the most famous thing that ever happened to the Amphicar. On the road, it was slow. On the water, it was slower. It leaked constantly. Salt water destroyed the undercarriage within years. Only 3,800 were ever built. Production stopped in 1968. The Amphicar became a novelty, a presidential prop, a pub quiz answer. Nothing more. Number 7. DuPont Corfam, 1963. DuPont had already given the world nylon and Teflon. In 1963, they believed they had done it again. Corfam was synthetic leather, stronger than real leather, water-resistant, held its shine for years. DuPont called it the future of footwear, and they spent $250 million developing it. For about 2 weeks, people were impressed. Then they wore the shoes. Corfam did not breathe. Feet sweated. In warm weather, wearing them was unbearable. Real leather molds to your foot over time. Corfam stayed rigid forever. Customers stopped buying quietly. Stores stopped stocking quietly. By 1971, DuPont sold the patent and walked away. $250 million was lost. Not because the material was cheap, because it never once considered what a human foot actually needs. Number 6. The AT&T picture phone, 1964. AT&T showed the world a telephone with a screen. You could see the person you were calling. The demonstration at the New York World's Fair was breathtaking. Journalists lined up to report on it. AT&T launched it commercially in 1968 in 3 cities. The monthly price was $160. That is over $1,400 in today's money. You could only call other picture phone subscribers. Almost nobody subscribed. AT&T had invented video calling 50 years before the infrastructure existed, before broadband, before anyone had decided whether they even wanted to be seen during a phone call. The picture phone stands as history's most expensive example of a perfect idea arriving at the completely wrong moment. Number 5. The Convair 880 and 990, 1959 to 1965. Boeing and Douglas owned the commercial jet market. Convair decided they wanted in. They built 2 jets, the Convair 880 and the Convair 990. Both were fast and technically impressive. Both were complete disasters. The Convair 880 could not compete with the Boeing 707 on cost or range. Airlines that ordered it faced operating expenses far beyond what Boeing charged. Cancellations mounted before planes were even delivered. Convair pressed on with the Convair 990, but it was not enough. By 1965, General Dynamics had lost $450 million on commercial aviation. That is over $4 billion today. The losses nearly destroyed the entire company. They exited the commercial aircraft business and never returned. Sometimes the technology works perfectly. Sometimes the market simply has no room for a third player. Number 4. The Gyrojet rocket pistol, 1965. Two American engineers built a gun that fired tiny rockets instead of bullets. It was lightweight and had barely any recoil. The CIA noticed, and the military tested it. James Bond used a similar weapon on screen. So what went wrong? Right after firing, the rockets were actually moving slower than a standard bullet. Up close, the Gyrojet was almost useless. In theory, a person standing 5 feet away could simply step aside. The rockets also misfired frequently. Each one cost far more to produce than a normal bullet. The military passed. The CIA passed. Production stopped before the decade ended. The Gyrojet was genuinely futuristic. It was also a weapon that could not reliably stop a threat at arm's length. Number 3. The NSU Row 80, 1967. Germany's NSU unveiled the Row 80 and the automotive world stopped moving. It won Car of the Year in Europe. The aerodynamic design was decades ahead of anything else on the road. The ride was whisper quiet. Journalists called it a masterpiece. Under the hood was a Wankel rotary engine, smooth, compact, revolutionary. It was completely unreliable. Owners began reporting engine failures at 20,000 miles, some at 15,000 miles. NSU quietly replaced thousands of engines across Europe, absorbing costs they could not afford. The brand's reputation collapsed with every broken engine. By 1977, NSU was absorbed entirely into Audi and ceased to exist. The Row 80 had been perfect in almost every way, except the one way that mattered to the person driving it home. Number 2. Studebaker, 1966. Studebaker had been making vehicles since 1852, one of the oldest manufacturers in America. In 1963, they unveiled the Avanti. Sleek, powerful, praised by every automotive journalist in the country. But Studebaker was losing money faster than any car could earn it back. Ford and General Motors were outspending them on every front. In December 1963, they closed all American factories and moved operations to Canada. It was not enough. In March 1966, Studebaker produced its last car and closed permanently. No announcement, no press conference, just a factory in Hamilton, Ontario that went quiet and never started again. The Avanti had been extraordinary. The legacy was real. None of it could survive when the money ran out. Number 1. The Chevrolet Corvair. It was sold from 1960 to 1969. Chevrolet launched the Corvair in 1960, and it was genuinely exciting. It had a rear engine, it was compact, and it was a real departure from every other American car on the market. Sales started strong. Then a young lawyer named Ralph Nader wrote a book. In 1965, Unsafe at Any Speed argued that the early Corvair had a dangerously flawed rear suspension, and that under specific conditions, the car could roll over without warning. The book became a national sensation. Congress opened hearings. Nader became famous overnight. General Motors, instead of responding with data, hired private investigators to dig up personal information on Nader. They followed him, and they tried to find something to discredit him. It backfired catastrophically. The president of General Motors was forced to apologize before the United States Senate. Corvair sales collapsed. General Motors canceled the car in 1969. Engineers later argued the dangerous early design had already been fixed years before Nader's book. It did not matter. The story was already written. The Corvair is not remembered as an innovative car. It is remembered as the product that gave birth to the entire consumer safety movement in America. The 1960s were a decade of genuine ambition. Men walked on the moon. Companies dreamed larger than ever before, but the Edsel taught us what ego costs. The picture phone taught us that timing matters more than technology. The Corvair taught us that trust, once broken publicly, does not come back. These were not small failures, they were spectacular ones. And that is exactly what makes them impossible to forget.